So I look and boom, I jump up on the stage and I get up with literally within 8 feet from him and I just give him the bird. I'm just like,
no way. That's so funny.
And I'm just like, I get tackled, gang tackled, these guys, the bouncers, whatever, like boom.
In this episode of For Goodness Sake, we have Del Puckett, a Renaissance man full of wisdom who became a mentor to me after I sold a guitar amp to him on Craigslist. We chat about his custom cigar box guitars, debate whether or not COVID measures will return, how censorship always backfires, and how he stuck it to the devil by flipping off Ozzy on stage back in the 80s. I hope you enjoy the episode. You got some interesting what?
Bible stuff for you, dude.
You do?
Yeah, actually. So I have to start it off with a question. Okay.
All right.
So Mars Hill, Acts chapter 17, you're familiar, right?
Vaguely.
Okay.
But it's obviously what...
But you went to the church.
Yep.
You went to the church, Mars Hill. Okay, so...
Shortly.
Obviously, so how long did you go there?
I went for a period of time. What was it, like 2008? I don't know. Before everything happened, and then I went away, because I was a part of a different church. I was part of my uncle's church.
Okay, yeah.
And then I came back when I came back to Albuquerque I guess I was never a member.
Okay. Okay, so I have to ask you a question. So obviously they got their name of their church from that famous sermon that Paul preached at Athens on Mars Hill, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I would assume so.
Okay, so you realize that sermon was a failure?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't either.
What do you mean by a failure?
Okay. Well, so this is part of Paul's second missionary journey, right? This is right smack dab in the middle. So he goes. If you read Acts chapter 17, the first one is Thessalonica. He goes there. Many people are saved, and he's just preaching Christ. The Messiah, resurrection from the dead. Then it gets kicked out. They get kicked out by the lewd band of what's it called? Fellows, whatever. And then he goes down to Berea, and the same thing. Of course, the Bereans, they're more diligent and they're more noble. They search the scriptures daily to find out whether these things are true or not, right? And then they kick Paul out again, and then he goes to Athens. Well, when he goes to Athens, he's vexed by all these what do you call it, idols and debauchery and stuff. Just all the Greek gods and whatnot, and so. So he's preaching in the synagogue and he's preaching in the marketplace, and the Epicureans and the Stoics, they catch on to him and they're like, "Hey, Paul, what we want to hear what you have to say. So we want to take you down to the what's it called, the Aragapite or whatever. I don't know what the name is, but it's basically Mars Hill, right?"
Okay.
And so then Paul's like, "Okay." So then he sees the inscription to the unknown God, right? So he's like, "Oh, that's my in, right? I'm going to use that as my strategy to preach to these people, right?" And so, "Hey, I noticed you guys had the inscription to the unknown God. Well, that's the God I'm going to tell you about." And then he goes on, dude, a beautiful sermon, from Genesis, from creation all the way through to the resurrection from the dead, right? I mean, just an amazing sermon, repentance from sin, just everything. And then nobody gets saved. Well, 2 people get saved, or a couple people get saved, a few people. And then, of course, they kick him out again, and then he goes down to Corinth. And if you read about Corinth, many people get saved again. So here's many people getting saved here. Paul's best sermon ever. Very few people get saved. And then prior to that...
Wait, why is it dubbed the best sermon ever if nobody got saved?
Well, so the ancient Greek right there, both secular people and biblical, that is considered some of the best usage of Greek in the entire world. Right. If you're a secular guy and you're studying literature in college, they're going to make you read the Athens sermon there of Paul because of the Greek, right?
Okay.
Well, so what the deal is if you read Corinthians chapter 2, Paul says, "Dude, I do not come to you with excellency of speech or the wisdom of man. I seek to know nothing but Christ and Him crucified," right?
Because he just came off discouraging.
Dude, it had to be one of those things where
I'm just starting fresh.
No, you're right. So in the Athens sermon, he doesn't mention Jesus. He alludes to him. He's like,
okay. So he's probably using their language of the Logos, but maybe didn't.
we can analyze that sermon, but
It didn't work.
it did, whatever it was, it didn't work.
Maybe it was the people.
It could have been many things, but Paul's takeaway was like, you know what? I'm not going to use man's wisdom,
Okay.
excellency of speech, or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just going to preach
I like that.
Christ crucified. And then, of course, it goes back to many people being saved again. So that being said, I didn't realize that until I studied it, and because I was going to use his exemplary sermon as my outline, the wisdom of man, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh. So that's the last thing I want to do is
It reminds me of it reminds me, a lot of content creators, for example, on the internet, I think, so you have a YouTube channel and you're very organic with the way you produce your videos. It's just put a camera up and you show people, they get the necessary info, and it's quality content. It isn't overproduced like this show would probably be, it's pretty produced, right? We have a literal producer, chorus, and the cameras, the lights, the incense. But it's interesting because that doesn't make a show valuable, right? It's the heart of it. But it seems like Paul maybe leaned too much on the aesthetic. I've been kind of venturing into philosophy, the philosophy greats, and I don't remember who this guy was talking about. It was a YouTube. He wasn't a YouTube professor, but it was a professor that was giving a lecture on YouTube, and he was talking about the aesthetic pursuit, which is more the vanity pursuit, which you could label as making a very visually nice and appealing type of video, and then you have the other pursuit, the one of struggle, one of difficulty, of turmoil, and it's kind of the converse of the aesthetic pursuit. And so I think about this a lot, especially we were just talking about it. As far as I have an addiction, or I have a problem, an obsession with the aesthetic, or like the visual, the design aspect of it.
Yeah.
And I may sometimes overlook or leave out the deeper stuff that maybe. I'm just maybe pulling this from what you're talking to me about Paul and his lecture to.
Okay, well that's good. So here's the deal, dude. So we are all on a journey, okay, and hopefully we are rolling our learnings forward, right? We go forward and we try things, we experiment, we creatively, whatever. And some things work and some things don't work. So, so the things that don't work, are they failures, or are they just, hey, I discovered something that doesn't work? Yeah. So that's going to save me time.
Well, you know what's interesting? Because you could make the argument, because now or throughout time, it's looked at as one of the greatest sermons, that it's possible it was also just not primed for the people. It wasn't ready for that crowd, and it wasn't effective on that crowd, because we look back and I guess now it's deemed one of his greatest sermon. Absolutely. And so you could make the argument that it was also the people weren't. Yeah. It wasn't a timely thing for the people that he was speaking to. And he actually makes that point, right? In like one of his letters, he says to the so and so I'm that, and to this person I'm that.
All things to all people. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm sure maybe he learned that lesson then.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's it. The day you stop learning is the day you're dead.
Yeah. Yeah, like there was something I took a long time ago from, I don't know who said it. It was like in a documentary or something, but somebody was saying that one of the things my grandmother told me was that learning is like eating. You never stop. You should never stop. Because as soon as you stop eating, you die. Exactly. The same as you stop learning, you become mentally dead. So I don't know if you want to. Actually, this would be fun. It's kind of a lead in here. So, you remember how we met?
Yes, I do. I was there.
Well, I guess this isn't. Well, maybe I don't remember if I officially met you at your house before all of this happened.
This is what I remember. I remember I wanted an orange, one of those little tiny
Tiny Terror.
Tiny Terror, yeah. So I went on Craigslist and found a Tiny Terror for an awesome price. And so I was like, called the dude up. It's like, I'm interested in your Tiny Terror. So I got directions to the dude's house, and I rocked up to the dude and it's Chad Barela. And it's like, hey, you look familiar. It's like, yeah, you look familiar too. It's like,
I knew exactly who you were. Yeah.
you knew who I was.
Because I'd been to your house.
Yeah, okay.
I was like, oh, weird. How funny. You showed up.
Small world. Yeah.
So yeah, you come in. We talked for like good, like half hour at least.
Yeah. Do you remember what we talked about?
I remember we talked about the gospel. We talked about the Lord to some degree.
Yeah.
Because then at the end of it, you invited me to your Bible study.
Did I? Okay.
Yeah. And I went.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that's how I ended up meeting your daughters and Christian and everybody. You brought me over to your house after a Bible study one time. You got to come over. It's right after. It's like 6 a.m. still because you guys met so early. It was pretty early, at 7 o'clock or something. And I go to your house and I meet, and I knew who they were. I don't know that I'd ever met them prior to that. But like I said, I was at your house because you hosted like a Christmas show.
Okay.
And Ives and Poema and I went there with my friend Aaron, and so I saw all the music crowd at your house. You played something too, actually. I think you played the
Little Drummer Boy.
Yeah, like August Rush style.
Yeah, I think I was a recital for a lot of my guitar students as well.
Okay, I don't know if I remember that.
I'm sure I would have like coupled it in there together.
But yeah, it made a big impression on me going to your house that time. I remember because it was a beautiful house.
Yeah.
Way out there, Rio Rancho, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I remember I was like, I want to know these people, but I never really had the opportunity to get to know any of you guys. So as the Lord would orchestrate you and me meeting through Craigslist, through a guitar amp. And I think about that sometimes because I think about the arc of my life. I wanted so badly to get out of here, out of Albuquerque. And I think, it was before then that I had done a little touring with another small band. And I just remember, meeting your daughters and you were like, hey, you guys should play together. And so I got integrated to play with bass primarily, I think originally. And then you brought me into the opportunity of teaching guitar lessons, which I didn't know anything about guitar really. And because you taught lessons over at
Interplay School of Music.
That's right, which is no longer there.
Mm-mm.
And I ended up playing in the band. And
how many years ago was that?
I want to say that was 2011, 12, somewhere around there.
All right.
I had just gotten back. And so I was working at Guitar Center at the time. That's how I had all this gear. I was like buying all this gear at cost. Tiny Terror. I had all the amps, I had the Fender Twin.
And then selling it for cheap on Craigslist.
I was. I probably needed money. I quit the job. I don't remember what it was. I was obviously selling it. I sold a bunch of gear during that time. I wish I'd have kept it. I always feel that way about music gear.
Yeah. I never regretted not selling anything.
Yeah. I've always regretted selling guitars, everything.
You still have that Gibson though, right?
My acoustic, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's over there.
Yeah, don't sell that one.
And so
my grandpa's life advice was you always buy guitars and you buy guns, but you never sell them.
That's correct.
Guns and guitars. And what's funny is if you get on, so that guitar, I think it was listed around $1,000.
Really?
At the time I got it. And now you look those things up, they're at least twice that. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Obviously they're limited. They're from the 60s, so you're not going to get any more.
Absolutely legit.
We're highly sought after.
So did you do a show and tell on?
I haven't yet. No, I brought it up here for you.
Okay.
This here, you explain it. You gifted it to me. You're allowed to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So can you hold it up to the camera? So that right there is a very intense array of prisms. It's called an interferometer block. And basically, in a nutshell, laser comes in and then it gets split up into 3 different beams. Each one of those beams goes off to an array, and then they get reflected back onto itself, refocused back into this thing. And if you know anything about interferometry, this is the optic that...
Well, I doubt anybody does.
It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. So this thing here is worth...
you told me
back in the day
when it was needed.
Back in the day, about 25 years ago, and that's 25-year-old technology, it was worth probably about $400,000.
Wow, guys, we're rich.
that's in context in the machine.
But now it's technologically
it's a paper,
irrelevant.
It's a paperweight now.
Yeah.
Yeah. A beautiful paperweight. You get some light.
Yeah, it's cool.
Shine some light, some lasers into that thing, and just.
I don't understand it still at all.
Yeah, I could walk you through it.
What would be the use case for that?
Well, interferometry. This is so basically. I've worked at Intel for almost.
What are those interferometry? What does this mean?
Interferometer.
Interferometer.
Yeah, so that's using laser light to measure and control an object, positionally. So I'm going to deep dive into some nerdy stuff here. Is that cool? Okay, so I've worked, I would say for the last 30 years on a specific lithography tool called the Nikon scanner, which is basically the tool that Intel uses to manufacture, to fabricate computer chips. Okay, so the Nikon, if you want to think of it as a camera, but think of it as like a 5-story camera. With the in the subfab, you have all the amp racks and the power control units and air units, right? In the area of the fab is the actual camera component of the Nikon, right? Which is, when I say camera, I'm really
using it by definition.
It's a multi-million-dollar camera, and Intel has scads of them. So basically, you have what they call the wafer stage. Now, this wafer stage is 2,600 pounds, the weight of a car essentially, and it floats on 3-micron air bearing, and it's controlled by voice coil motors in every axis, Z, Y, X, and so it's basically floating but being controlled, right?
And so you measure it.
So these lasers are hitting it from every axis, the X-axis, Z-axis, Y-axis, and there's mirrors on the stage that reflect the light back into counters, right? So as the wavelength goes by, the wavelength in nanometers, right? So you can tell exactly how far this, and
so
it's
you can dial it in perfectly.
It's real time. It's the speed of light, right? So you know exactly where this 2,600 pound wafer stage is at all times because of this optic right here. So, but here's the kicker though, that this thing is moving 700 millimeters per second, scanning back and forth as you're taking pictures. Bam, 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 bam. Next wafer comes in, a line.
What is a wafer?
A wafer is 12 inches piece of silicon, which is about the thickness of a dime, essentially glass. And so on that 12-inch diameter, real thin, that's a wafer. You have hundreds or thousands of chips that are built upon that.
You said hundreds of thousands of chips?
Hundreds or thousands.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And the dimensions, the critical dimensions of the reason why it's so precise is because the dimensions are down in the nanometers. Now, if you were to take your human hair, one human hair, splice it into 1,000 human hairs, take one of those 1,000th of a human hair and split that into 1,000 of a human hair. That's the dimensions that we're focusing this.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's why.
That's a nanometer?
Yes.
A 1,000th of your hair, did you say?
A 1,000th of a 1,000th.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Of your hair is a nanometer. So it's basically it's a 0.90 to the digit. Yeah, it's small. Now that technology is old. The technology they have now, if you took the camera to the moon, you would be able to image my thumbnail from the moon. That's the technology that they have now. Does
it scare you?
No, it's high tech. It
doesn't scare you at all?
No.
Of like with the potential of nanotechnology and stuff like that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not scared of anything necessarily.
Sure, but does it alarm you in any way?
No. It's it's just technology. Technology can be used for good and
it's
evil.
A tool. It's a medium.
Yeah, it's just unfortunately, it will be used for evil, and that's the sad part about it. But
so we talked about briefly in a previous episode about I guess I don't know if they're like they're genetically modified mosquitoes, so I guess that's not the same as like nanotechnology. I guess you can say nanotechnology is like CRISPR. Have you ever heard of CRISPR?
That's the DNA.
altering,
Yeah.
which is similar, I imagine, but they're like getting down to like the the DNA and altering DNAs of different.
Supposedly for good.
Sure.
Yeah, but everybody knows it's nefarious.
Do you think that would you equate that with playing God?
Yeah, playing God. Yeah, you don't want to let me just say it this way. You need to protect your DNA.
Yeah.
Don't let anybody monkey with your DNA, dude. Because it's not going to end well at all.
So, okay. So that's what this is.
Interferometer block. It mounts upside down. It basically hangs. And then once it's in place, then the tool is built around this optic. So this optic is like literally the heart and soul of, and you can see here, there's 3 on this side here and 1. So the main laser goes in here, blink, and it bounces around and then it comes out here. It goes to these fiber optic. And you could actually read that, it's got the X and the Y and all that stuff, but it's just beautiful. I mean, if you let the sunlight come in, I put this in my windowsill so that the sunlight comes in and just shattered.
That's a good idea.
Spectrum all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's heavy.
It's just like a solid piece of steel and glass. Right? Is that glass?
Yeah. So Intel about 2 years ago decided they're going to demo all those tools. So all the tools that I worked on for my career, at the end of my career, I got the opportunity to dismantle them and to throw everything into the recycle bin.
And you couldn't bring yourself to throw them out.
So some things I recycled from the recycle bin. Yeah, some of these being some of them.
Because that was like, how many years had you worked on the machine? At
least 25 years.
25 years. So that represents, so when you gave it to me, it was a meaningful thing. You're like, hey, this is...
Absolutely.
In a way, this is my blood, sweat, and tears. And it's as complex as, believe it or not, as you are. Very, what's cool about you, what's interesting about you is I was drawn to you because I think you had, such a strong intellect and you were very curious. And you don't meet many people. I never really met that many people here like that. And I remember the first time I really thought this was when you brought out, because we were teaching lessons, you brought out when you had done it a few of these, but you had written out all the guitar notes and theory, and you, like an engineer, like your brain, I was like, I can't even fathom what you're doing here. But it was page by page by page of like this music theory. And you were also kind of like innovating in a way. Yeah. Explain what that was. I don't remember.
Again, it's just discovery. The more you learn, then the more you learn. And it just kind of compounds and stuff like that. And so for me, I was just on the quest, like chords, what makes a chord a major chord? What makes a chord a minor chord? Okay, well, what makes it a minor seventh? Or then you start getting the jazz chords. And then, why does this chord work in this context? And then, well, what would happen if you broke the rules and forced this chord into that context? And it's like, boom, all of a sudden that, just the mental audio explosion goes off. You're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. This chord sounds awesome. And it's like, yeah, and so for me, it was just all about discovery. And so I wanted,
why is it? So there's like philosophy involved. It's like,
yeah, but it was with sound and notes and music and stuff. And so for me, I was like, just, like we were talking about hunger and food and stuff like that. Same thing. It's like, I was hungry for discovery of chords and melody and harmony and just.
But it's wild that was your thing. Like you're kind of like the mad scientist in my mind that, for whatever reason, music was so fascinating to you where, for others it's fascinating but for entirely different reasons. You wanted to understand the DNA of music. Why did that chord make me sound or make me feel that way? Not necessarily feel that way, but why did it sound so good versus a diminished 7, whatever,
Yeah.
So what was different about this thing? What was the innovation? I don't remember the distinction of that versus, say, a typical like music theory or.
Well, I'm a very visual person as well. And so obviously music is with our ears and our heart and mind and soul and stuff like that. You don't really see it. I mean, you can sight read music and stuff like that, but for me, it was just easier to understand and maybe communicate and teach if you write it out and stuff. And so I would draw the diagrams of the chords and draw the tab and
the fretboards and all the circles.
Yeah, all that stuff. And while I was at work, I had a lot of free time. Like you'd be running a test, so you got to set up this test. Okay, now you got 15 minutes before this test is done, and you get your data back. So what are you going to do for 15 minutes? And like, well, it's like This is like before the internet, before everybody was
TikTok and all that stuff.
You know what I'm saying? So I had my little notebook and I was like, okay, well, I'll just draw and then I got like into it, I would draw the hand and then draw the fingernails and draw the core. You know what I'm saying? I got OCD about it.
But you did a whole book and then you did another book and then you did it like, I think at least 3, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I passed them around to like my kids and
I think you loaned me one and I was like, I don't want this. I'm just it's too,
I'm afraid.
It's too valuable. Like the amount of like time and effort that went into that. It was wild to me.
Well, yeah, I have a bunch of those books like that. And they're basically just my mental ramblings during when I had like free time stuff. Just kind of journaling, but journaling music stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So now you're making these.
Yeah.
These are, what are they?
3-string cigar box guitars. It was the year 2014. One of my work friends went online and bought one of these things and brought it to work and handed it to me.
At Intel?
Yeah. He's like, Del, what? Dude, check this out. And I was like, I pick it up and down, pick it back. And he goes, no. He goes, take it home and plug it into your amps and have fun with it. And then, I went home and plugged it in, dude. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this thing is crazy. It's so easy to play. You just tune to an open chord and everything's just one finger. And you can.
What does your shirt say? You have shirts?
Jam just instantly. I got a bunch of shirts.
The 3-string.
6 strings or 3 strings too many. It's kind of one of my little taglines, right? And stuff. And so the next day I came back to work, and so his name's Aaron. He was all curious. He's like, "What'd you think, man? What'd you think of that cigar box guitar?" I was like, "Dude, amazing!" And he started laughing, and I go, and he goes, "Where is it?" And I go, well, you ain't getting it back."
Really?
I says, number one, you could be the good guy and give it to me, or number two, you make me be the bad guy and make me steal it from you, but you ain't getting it back. He started laughing. He goes like, "Dude, I bought it for you, dude."
Did he?
It's a gift. Yeah. So,
wow.
So anyhow, while I'm playing this thing, I'm a heavy hitter, dude.
Yeah.
I attack and bend, and, I'm basically destroying this thing because it's a cigar box guitar. It's made of, cardboard and paper and stuff. And everybody asked me, "Did you build that?" And I'm like, no. I tell them the story. But then I got to thinking, it's like, I probably could build one of these things. I've built guitars in the past, parts casters and stuff. And so as I'm thinking, it's like, well, shoot, man, if I ever did build one, man, I could trick it out. I could rip apart some distortion pedals and I could put some electronics in there and, make little secret switches to make it sound like a flanger or whatever. I could put like real pickups in it and get all, jicky. And so I started building one. My next door neighbor comes over. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" "I'm building a cigar." "Oh, really, man? Can you build me one?" And so one led to 2, led to 3. And
how many have you made now?
Dude, I'm knocking on the door of 500, dude.
Wow.
I'm knocking on the door of 500.
What number is this?
This one here, it should say on the back here, I believe this is, can you see that there? What does it say? 440, 445, 445.
Can you play a little thing?
Sure.
They're kind of like a novelty, like even back then.
They are.
Do you know where Aaron got his?
Aaron,
the guy that gave it to you.
Oh yeah. The guy's name was Fuzzy, and I looked him up online, and he was an old guy back then. I'm not sure if he still does it. But his playing was amazing, and I saw the actual guitar that he built. And so that's what kind of inspired me to do YouTube videos and stuff. Was that's what?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
At the time of me meeting you, by the way, you had you do YouTube videos.
Yeah.
You did a Christmas. Charlie Brown. You used to do all your own guitar renditions of the old Christmas classics.
Yeah.
And you threw them up on your YouTube channel. And I remember you had like hundreds of thousands of views on these, not just the Christmas ones, but on your YouTube videos. Because that was your outlet.
Yeah.
And you just expressed, you'd record a video. When I first met you, brought me over and you were playing, I want to say it was the Home Alone song. That one, I don't know what the song's called, but it's the classic one. But you were playing it on guitar, which is kind of a crazy song because it's had so many different moving parts. But you did it on the guitar, and I remember you recorded a video right after that.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry.
No, that's okay. So it's tuned, open tuning. But the cool thing about these things is you can put any strings on that you like. You can tune it however you like, and obviously play it however you like. And so these are just acoustic guitar strings. I think this is the A string, the D, and the G. It's a wound G, and I tuned it down to E because I like the low sound. So you really can't make a mistake. It's designed for one finger. But you can get all cool, right?
Yeah.
So let's see here. Well, I hear that train a-coming, rolling down the bend. I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when, 'cause I'm stuck in Folsom Prison. Time keeps dragging on, but that train keeps on rolling on down to San Antone.
That's awesome. So these are nails you have in the, I guess, in the position that would be what? I guess that's exactly what that is supposed to do. It's holding the strings down as a...
Yeah, so you got nails, solder burns, hinges. I mean, the whole thing is meant to be DIY.
And you made this one for me. It's like a banjitar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paint can.
Yeah, it's got like a resonator top.
Resonator.
So it just sounds real southern, really.
Yeah. Dude, that's a banjo, dude.
It's awesome, and I loved playing it. It says a date on there, Christmas 2019.
Dude, awesome. 275.
And it's cool because when you gave that to me, I believe you also gave me COVID.
No.
I'm not even kidding. Do you remember?
I remember that, dude. I think we were the initiators of COVID.
I think...
Because I got it really bad, too.
I know.
Dude, I was so sick. Like, I've never been
because that was the Christmas when you were sick, I was sick. We were all, like, just out.
Yep.
And you gave that to me before Christmas, and I think, like, 2 weeks or whatever. And because you were visiting, because you were living in Oregon at the time. And you gave me that. And I think we both came down with COVID, whoever gave it to who.
Yeah.
Or, it was a bad.
We shared it.
Flu, sickness, whatever.
Yeah.
And this was before anybody knew about anything.
Yep.
I was out for 10 days.
I was out for, that sounds about right. I know I had it for
fever.
3 days. I was just I think I would get up like an hour a day just to like drink some water or like that. I was just in the fetal position, just,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Yeah, I had a fever for 10 days. I don't think it wasn't constantly at 103, but it was high. And it was not good. Like, I thought maybe I'd had pneumonia or something. Like, people were checking on me like, hey, whoa, you've been in bed for 10 days?
Hey, but you lived to tell about it, dude.
Yeah, I'm back. But what's crazy is I got sick, and then like 2 weeks later, on New Year's Eve, I got sick again. So it was like that rebound, whatever.
Okay.
And so I got sick again. It was such a bummer. I was like getting ready to hit the ground running with...
Hey, dude, I hear it's coming back.
Oh, I know, right?
Yeah, I heard they're...
Do you think... I heard today there was an announcement, actually.
Yeah, it's like, hey, coming to a theater near you.
His spokeswoman person kind of just said straight up, like, yeah, he's going to start masking again. He's going to start social distancing. What are we going to do?
Let's see how that works for you.
I don't think it'll happen. Do you think it'll happen?
I don't, I hope not, dude. I think, shame... But how does that thing go? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I don't think people are going to fall for it this time.
But what's crazy is they kind of did the second time already.
Dude, if you fall for that,
right?
Dude,
like, remember there was the lockdowns, the mask mandates?
Yeah.
And then, I guess there wasn't a mask mandate the first lockdown. I don't remember if you remember, but, and then they took it back, and then they gave out the therapy and, forced that on everyone. And then they tried to reopen, and then they said, oh no, you still got to, wear the masks and all that stuff.
That's what you call getting jerked around, dude.
Yeah. And so, at that point, I think it was pretty obvious. Most people started sliding off of it.
Yeah.
And so I agree. Like when I think about it and talk about it, Chorus, are you on the fence? What do you think?
I'm just worried that, like, I didn't think it would get so out of hand in the first place. And so I have little hope that people are going to be able to stand up. Like, the second there's some kind of consequence, like a job that's in limbo, I feel like people are going to fold again.
Dude, I have to disagree with you, dude. So,
tell us
respectfully, dude. I give people the benefit of the doubt, dude. I think
I did.
I think
I do now, but...
and I'm hoping, dude. I'm hoping that people are smarter than that, And I understand, and I get it, dude. If your job, this and that, but. I mean, gosh, man, it's like the boy who cried wolf, right? After a while, you're like, oh, wait a minute. I think these guys are crying wolf. And obviously it just so happens to be strategically in alignment with the election and all of that and stuff. And so I think, gosh, I'm being hopeful when I say this. I'm hoping that people are smarter than that, not to buy into it this time around.
I had the feeling the first go around, I remember having conversations with pastors, with friends about, I don't think that we're equipped. I don't think there's enough courage in the church in general. And I think I was proven right for the most part, with a few exceptions, of course, that most people would just cave. And that, especially within Christianity, I feel like we've been so trained to be nice and to not put up a stink or a fight, that fighting is always bad type of thing. But I think there's such a thing as a virtuous fight, a virtuous battle that you didn't necessarily put yourself into. I always kind of put it this way: like if someone comes up to you and punches you on the street, and they're a consistent threat to you, a persistent threat, what do you just let them beat you up, or not even just yourself, right? This is the pacifist argument. What if it's a defenseless woman and they punch her, and you have the ability to do something, and it's just an argument to prove that fighting is not always bad. There's also righteous causes to engage in a battle and a fight, in the defense of yourself and the defense of others. It's kind of what martial arts is kind of about, right? There is honorable reasons to engage in fighting. And so I think that we were just so primed, especially back then, under no context. Like in my generation, for example, there was never any historical context that fighting was ever justified or okay or anything like that, because everything's just been hunky-dory, nice, easy coasting throughout life. And then, something happens like that where you're literally, you're being forced to take therapy or medicine that you don't want, or you're forced to close your business down, your livelihood, and it's affecting everything about your life, not just your life, but the life of those who you love.
Yeah.
And it's being paraded as if if you don't participate, then you're not loving, when it's actually quite the opposite.
Yeah. And dude, for me, it was just like a discernment. It's like the guys that keep lying to you, they're the guys that are telling you that, oh, you need to comply and submit to this new mental state of mind. And I'm like, I don't trust you, man. I just don't. And so I became an awesome rebel.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I'm not going to take your medicine. No, I'm not going to comply. And the only time, and I was like, I was that guy, dude, who wore his mask like this,
Oh, under your nose.
Hey, you need to cover your nose. It's like, seriously, you're one of these people that's going to force me to cover. What? Okay, yeah. Okay.
And in New Mexico, we're in New Mexico. So the context in New Mexico, you weren't back, were you then?
No, I was in Oregon then.
Which was pretty bad there too, I imagine. Yeah. But like 95% of everyone, it was like nice when you went into the grocery store and nobody else, and they couldn't really force it. But they did, it was obviously very socially enforced. It was a mask mandates here. We kept them here in New Mexico longer than almost any other state.
Yeah, I remember that.
And, but I stopped. I never really did. When it was voluntary, I wore it kind of as a gesture for the most part in my shop, in my business. But outside of that, I just couldn't bear it.
Dude, what's so weird is like you're driving down the street, right? You pull up to a traffic light and you look over, you're like, whoa. The guys got the helmet and the mask and
still.
You're like, wow.
They said mass formation psychosis. Before that kind of became a thing, there was a guy, on YouTube, a YouTube creator, who put all that stuff together. It's not his ideas, but it's a historical thing when you look back and, tyrannies that have formed throughout history. How did they get those things to happen? Fear. They institute fear.
Yep.
And so you get people in a state of, I need to relieve this tension, this fear, anything. If it's just, okay, people need to wear masks, whatever it is, right? Then I'm your most ardent supporter of doing that, if this is going to relieve me of my fear. And so mass formation psychosis, when I heard that, I was like, that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And then you get Peter McCullough, is that right? And all those doctors that were coming out, being very popular. They were saying that term, and they started canceling Joe Rogan. They started canceling all these things, these terms This podcast is probably going to be shadow banned for even just mentioning a lot of these names.
Yeah.
But yeah, I all that to say, I think that the last few years, my discernment, my gut feeling is that I think people have developed, wisened up, and developed a degree of courage, a spine.
Yeah.
Not all people, but I think the necessary people.
Yeah, well, I think
the leaders.
I think people are getting galvanized in their. In other words, if you can be controlled and manipulated and mandated, then you will, and you will comply. But if you're not, then you won't. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's not so much a middle anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
People are, and you'll see it like a lot of people on the coasts, West Coast, East Coast. Those will be your mask zones, and then of course the flyover part. That'll be all the
No
free.
way, yeah.
The free, except for New Mexico.
That's crazy. No, I don't think so. I don't think it'll work this time. They may try it. And what do you think the end goal is? Do you think it's genuinely because
No, the end goal is political.
Do you think it's like mail-in ballots type of thing?
Entirely do that, or whatever it is.
Primarily,
whatever it is. I've also heard that they want to get the BLM and the Antifa fired up again. So what better way
generate the fear for voting?
Because those guys have to be masked anyway, right? So it's like, everybody's masked, so you don't know who they are. But no, it's all control, manipulation, fear mongering. Ultimately, because there is a presidential election coming.
We had a little bit of a lull. It seems like in the last year, it's been kind of chill.
Yeah.
It's been nice. I think people forget, I forget the absolute tension that was in my mind. Like, my business is on the line.
Yeah.
This comes right after, the being canceled and then going into the COVID, and we own a business. So we're like, yeah, brick and mortar business. People have to come and get their services. I didn't have to, but I was provoked to make a statement. I remember I posted, it was like, I will not comply any further. And I just posted statistics and things like that. I think Rand Paul had said, don't comply at the time. And I think people were still on the fence socially. That's the difference. And that's the major difference. I think socially, culturally, we're done with it.
Yeah.
They weren't done with it then. So they were able to continue it. And I think they want to do it again. And they're probably going to test it. But I really don't think the culture is going to have anything to do with it.
Yeah,
I really don't.
Like I said,
unless you start seeing propaganda, people falling dead in the street, and you see legitimate percentages of 25% of people infected, something crazy.
Well, again, they can fabricate news to be
that's what they try to do.
Whatever they want. In fact, I would encourage people to fact check me on this one. If you go back and you look at the flu statistics right before COVID, you'll see. I remember looking at it for myself.
I remember too. Yeah.
Yeah, and the flu went from 14,000 or whatever down to
deaths.
Yeah,
on a yearly basis,
yeah.
Because a lot of people die. It was one of the leading causes of
from 14,000 down to 13.0. 13, not 13,000, just 13. It's like, wait, 14,000 to 13. Okay, guys, do the math. Okay,
yeah.
And that was when COVID mysteriously appeared and spiked. Okay, so that you what?
Yeah,
that's true. And not only for Oregon, but also for Washington State, both of those states. And so I was curious about that. And here's another interesting little tidbit as far as, and you can, again, be like the Bereans in Acts chapter 17, figure this out on your own to see if I'm telling you the truth. When it was, before it was mail-in balloting, you could look at the history of both Washington State and Oregon State. It would go blue, red, blue, red, red, blue, blue, red, blue, red, blue, blue, red, 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 blue. And then when they did mail-in balloting, blue.
Really?
Both Oregon and Washington State. So.
Yeah, no, I mean.
What do you do with that data?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. The one that really got me, the statistic that was infuriating, and the one that I think provoked me to say, I'm done. It was, I was a part of a church at the time that was participating in a lot of these, measures. But the one that really bothered me was the children, the statistics of brought to the death or whatever else, sickness and death, it was so low. It was like astronomically low. Yet they were still forcing children to wear masks and do all these different things. And it's almost like only like extreme cases of immunocompromise or something like that were the ones where children were being, lethally affected. And so when I saw that, I was like, why should healthy children? That was the one that was, to me, the most frustrating.
Yeah.
And
I seen some fights in an airplane. It was like they were like forcing the little kid. Here's this kid. Like 2 years old, if that. You know what I'm saying? That kid wouldn't wear a mask, and they're just the kids having a meltdown, and crying, and
I think we all saw all the videos, the viral videos.
Like, gosh, guys, come on, man. Let's have just a little bit of common sense, just a little bit of compassion, and
people are scared.
Understanding, yeah.
I don't think people, unless that was a serious campaign. You know what's crazy? I thought about this. A lot of people don't think about this, but internet censorship before COVID was quite non-existent. I think there was a handful of figures that were, banned or whatever it was. Your Alex Jones is your, like Trump was not at the time, of course. But what happened with COVID is the stakes were so high that now we have to censor certain material because it's going to have lethal consequences if we don't censor these types of things. But before COVID, before 2020, this is such a rich episode. We're going to get in trouble for this. These trigger words.
I hope so.
This is why, That's why we don't have organic reach. But it's because of 2020 and everything that happened that censorship really kind of became the norm. That if you say things like right now, this was not a thing. It was not a thing. It wasn't a known thing. In fact, I remember James O'Keefe. Do you know who he is? Mm-hmm. Project Veritas, formerly? No, he's with O'Keefe Media Group.
OMG.
And he was I was right around that time, 2020, where he exposed like Google, YouTube. They had certain dark documents in their back pages or whatever of certain keywords and conspiracies or whatever that were being blacklisted. That if you search them, then they would have to. And they do this if you like search a certain topic that's verboten.
Yep.
They'll give you only designated resources like your mainstream media.
Yep.
And they're always in denial of those theories or those things.
Have you guys seen the search results? So it's when a story is unraveling and Google and mainstream media can't get a handle on the narrative yet. It says, the results on this search are changing quickly, and we are not confident that we're going to give you the right results. So stay tuned.
So they won't show them.
So they won't show them.
Wow.
So frustrating. Frustrating, isn't it?
That's where I get a little alarmed. But then you also think, well, so long as we can maintain our
1984 Big Brother.
But as long as we can maintain like the competition, and we still do live in a republic of sorts, the Constitution, where you can have competition. Like Rumble right now is competing against YouTube's, and obviously Twitter or X is kind of doing the same thing, where certain ideas or things that otherwise would be like they had a actual stranglehold on all of the internet information in the most prominent places.
Yeah.
And if you remember, after Jan 6, these websites were purged. Like
all of my favorite YouTubers,
Parler,
every one of them got canceled.
Purged.
Yeah.
Yeah. And many of them started to come back over time. And now, funny enough, Trump's back on Twitter.
You can
Instagram.
Obviously, you can go find all these people, but they're just not easily acceptable.
Yes. Accessible. Yeah. And so they've been relegated into the digital ghetto, as they say, where, you can be on there, but you're not a serious person if you're not on this platform. And that's kind of what it became. And it had to change, obviously, when Elon bought Twitter. And I think that's why it's such a contentious thing right now. There is a war over internet information. Funny enough, InfoWars.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Jones.
But like this whole Threads thing, it's not catching on, dude.
Oh, no.
No. And
they poured billions
they're trying
into that, I'm
so
sure.
hard, dude. It's like they're like trying to force it on my feed. In fact, get a load of this. I did a screen capture of it with a little X over it like that. And I said, no thanks. And I did a hashtag deep state, dude, and it got blocked.
Really?
Just because of the hashtag. I'm like, wow. Okay. Yeah. It's like, that just confirms my.
But isn't it wild that did not exist prior to 2020? Not even close. And this is why I got so alarmed in 2020 is that when everything was happening and the unraveling, this is after we had COVID, you know? And so I was like, I think I was telling Bria, I was like, I think I had what this is going on in China. At the time, it was called Wuhan coronavirus.
Yeah. Novel virus.
The novel coronavirus. And I started seeing on Twitter, there was a video that popped up of China building these hospitals. I don't know if you remember this. Do you remember this, Course? Did you ever hear about this?
Yeah, I did see that.
And this was like in January, I believe January or even December of 2020. And these videos were popping up on Twitter. And then Zero Hedge posts an article that said it likely originated in a lab. This is January 2020. And this is before it really reached us or any panic or anything like that here. And Zero Hedge gets banned. It was one of the first bannings. And it was one of the first experiences I had. And I thought, that was so strange. So I click, I try to get through. I type independently Zero Hedge and I read the article. And sure enough, they make, they're very heavy on CIA. Like they're pretty, meticulously go through CIA. Like they challenge the CIA, the narrative, and as it were. And so Zero Hedge gets banned off Twitter. And at the time, it's obviously it's not Elon Musk. It was Jack Dorsey. And now we found out that the CIA and all these intelligence agencies had built backdoors through all these social media companies. And so they were the ones that were likely censoring this information.
Dude, that's why you can't trust any of those guys, dude. Bottom line, don't trust any of those guys. And if it's coming at you from the mainstream media, fill in the blank of your 3-letter acronym for your mainstream media, whatever the case is, I can guarantee you 100% it's false.
No bueno.
Yep. So what do you do with that?
Yeah. That was the first banning that I remember experiencing. And I'm like, dang, now we're all having to like worry about, is my bank account going to be,
dude,
revoked?
Do you know what
PayPal?
Yeah, no, those are serious things.
My Stripe account?
Dude, my fear, if you want to encapsulate my fear, I fear for Donald Trump's life.
You do?
I do. It's like,
that's what everybody's been saying this last week.
It's because, dude, the opposition they're unhinged, dude. Absolutely.
Still, you think?
More so now than they were ever, it seems.
I'm kind of detached from a lot of, I don't know what stream of info you're tapped into, but.
Well, the night of the debate, I think.
Because he was on that Tucker interview?
I think he did the Tucker, and those guys got 250 million views, dude. And
yeah,
the debate got like what, 510, something like that.
Yeah.
It was like,
and I think those numbers are a little inflated because they're impressions. They're not total views.
Yeah.
Like live viewership on Fox would be like, or whatever. Was it Fox?
Yeah. But still though, they
Rumble.
That was one of the topics that came up, and it's a reality, dude. I mean, I would not put it past one of these.
It always backfires. Anytime this is why censorship and banning, especially in a country where you have legal recourse for these types of things, and you can create another competitive alternative, a parallel economy of sorts. That's why when you get Trump, he creates his own platform and he goes on Twitter now, he's on Instagram. Because they had to capitulate because he was getting his message out anyway. It didn't matter. It was irrelevant. But the point is, it backfires. When they do that, it creates this like powder keg of like, it's not going to work. And that's why you see Tucker get so many views. That's why you see Trump get so many views. And that's why I think a lot of people on the left are starting to be like, yeah, I am free speech. Because they're realizing the censorship is really provoking, I think, a lot of people. And it's really repelling their supporters.
Yep. Because
that is authoritarian activity. By principle, on principle.
Yeah. Americans, we got it in our blood, freedom. We don't like being told what to do, what to think, where to be, what to wear. We like our, what's the word?
Independence.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we live in a very interesting time in history. The political theater that's going on right now. I mean, you're going to be telling your grandkids, they're going to be,
I hope I can remember all of it. That's partially why I'm doing this.
What was it like back in the day when Trump was president?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you're like, let me tell you, it was crazy.
I wonder, Douglas McGregor, you're familiar with this guy? You've maybe seen him on one of these news things, interviews. He's a former like general or something in the United States. Anyways, he's on record. I believe he said with Patrick Bet-David in an interview with PBD podcast recently, the last month or so. He doesn't believe that there will be a 2024 election.
I've heard that theory too as well.
Yeah. And that, the banks or whatever it is, the collapse with everything that's going on.
War.
Inflation, World War III.
Yeah, we can't have an election because there's a war.
I think Tucker said, or somebody that Tucker was talking to, said that in the next year, we're going to be at war with Russia. That's what their prediction was.
And it's all unnecessary, man-made, fabricated, again, to protect the guilty.
And you know why? This is why I'm encouraged. Is despite all that and the powerful people that are, at the head of our country and really the Western countries in general, I think that they are overextended. Like they don't have the support of the people as they did previously. I do think that the people have started to really move on. And the reason I say that, the election, there won't be an election, the banks, all these different things, the inflation, the Biden administration, I think has been a dramatic letdown.
The blackout, don't forget the blackout.
The blackout, yeah. I just, I think that people they're disillusioned. I've just in my observation, the amount of that, for example, I've been kind of exploring this in my mind. Cancel culture, I think is really dead. I really do. Like, I really don't think there's much. I think people will still try to,
so I get a load of this. They tried to cancel, what was it? Who they tried to cancel? Oh yeah, they tried to cancel, who was that guy that went to Jason Aldean? They tried to cancel that dude.
Yeah.
Goes to number one, right? And then they tried to cancel, who's the other guy that they tried to cancel? I forget.
Everyone.
Yeah. And then they go, but whenever the other people try to cancel it, like the Targets and the Bud Light and stuff like that, those guys are actually canceled. Yeah. So there's a legitimate type of canceling.
It's like an awakening is really happening, a revelation of sorts. I've dubbed it the apocalypse, because an apocalypse, I think it's the derivative of the Greek word is the Greek foundational phraseology is supposed to be the great revealing or a great revealing is what an apocalypse is. So when you read apocalypse or Revelation,
the apocalypse,
it's really just the great revealing, right?
Yeah.
And so I actually think that very much so that we're in this public consciousness awakening. And I think people they've been duped so many times. They're like, I'm not going to be duped again. And so they're actually going almost too far.
Yeah.
We're like, we explore some of these funny things like nukes aren't real. And,
I've heard you say that. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't believe that, but we explored the theory that was trending on Twitter and the people that do believe that. And it's like people have gone so far into this breaking of trust, public trust in institutions and government and society in general, that I think people are like primed to really, it's in a scary way, primed to accept anything. This is where they need to go.
This if you're going to trust anything, dude, don't trust the politicians, don't trust the media, don't trust anybody. Trust the word.
He's the same.
Trust the Lord.
Yesterday, today, and forever.
Amen. So dude, this Bible is interesting story with this thing here. I've been carrying this thing here since the mid 90s and just trashing it. I mean, just not on purpose, but just like, using it. I mean, and it got to the point where there's pages that were flying out and it wore out. I had tape on it and everything. And my daughter introduced me to some of her friends, Janine and Manolo. They live up in Santa Fe.
Yeah.
You know those guys? Yeah. They mentioned you.
Love them. Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out.
They came and saw me at the Santa Fe market or the Spanish market.
Well, Manolo rebinds.
I didn't know that.
Bibles.
Maybe she did tell me that.
And so I was like, "Oh, dude, can you rebind?" And I showed him my Bible. He's like, "Yeah, I don't know."
Really?
It's pretty bad.
Aren't they a special couple?
Yeah, absolutely, dudes. And so I gave it to him as a challenge. Okay, and man, I tell you what, Manolo did an awesome job.
Can you plug him?
Yes, absolutely. And so if you guys, if anybody out there has a Bible that they need rebound and made brand new again, reach out to me and I'll put you in contact with Manolo. And I can't say whether or not he can, but we can certainly try.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But anyhow, so my old Bible.
How do they get in touch with you real quick? Another one in the
The
moment.
best way is probably just my email, puckettcbg@gmail.com.
Cool.
Yeah. And all of that stuff is, I'm not hiding from anybody. So I'm easy to find. But yeah, I mean, so now I have my old Bible brand new again. And it's like, it's like,
That's awesome.
It's like putting on an old pair of sneakers that just fit perfect, you know?
How did you, I could talk about a few things. We can actually talked about most, and we're actually at an hour already, but I want to keep going.
Keep going, dude. Keep going.
You played in a band a while back.
I've been in many bands.
You used to play at church, but
Too many bands.
Actually, yeah, let's do this. I don't remember, but you used to play in bands. You were a wild guy in your young years, if I remember. How did you come to the Lord?
How did I come to the Lord? That's what I just want to make sure that you're asking how I came to the Lord. Okay, because that has nothing to do with bands.
No, fair enough.
Okay,
yeah.
fair enough. How did I come to the Lord? Interesting question. Okay, so my story is a typical story. I grew up in Socorro, New Mexico. That's where I went to high school. And the friends that I made were musician friends. We were partiers. We would play bands and stuff like that. And the music that at the time was, a lot of it was, I would classify it now as devil music. It was the Black Sabbaths, it was the Ozzy Osbournes, it was the Judas Priest, it was the
metal. Yeah,
that kind of stuff. But it always had that demonic, like breaking the law and Green Manalishi with the 2-pronged crown and Highway to Hell, AC, all that kind of stuff, right? And something inside of me was just, nah. Yeah.
Did you grow up any Christian anything? Was it in the house at all?
Yeah, we went to, Sunday school as kids, both my mom and my grandmother every once in a while. I think we dabbled in a little bit of the Catholic Church and stuff like that, but I wasn't religious at all. But there was just something about the evilness that I perceived in the music that I was finding myself at odds with, kind of rebelling against it. There was something not right. And so for me, I would kind of gravitate toward less evil music, like bands like, Journey or Scorpions or Van Halen or ZZ Top or something that was maybe more neutral, not so hardcore, dark and
evil lyrics,
devilish. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of started moving away in a musical sense, away from that kind of stuff and kind of concentrating on less evil music. Well, then I moved to Albuquerque, started going to school at TVI, and it was during that time.
How old were you?
I was probably 19.
Okay.
Ish. And I was still listening to the 94 Rock, and they had one of these music programs where they would do new music, and so we got a brand new band, a Christian band from LA called Striper, right? And so
yeah,
they put Striper on the radio, and I remember I would tune in and I was listening to it, and I was just looking at the speaker, and they were talking about Jesus, and I was like, whoa, you could actually just see it come out of the speaker. You're like, what the heck? So right off the bat, I got on my skateboard and rode down to the music store and I bought the cassette, the Striper cassette, right? And I burned that thing out just listening to it. And so something in my spirit just kind of resonated with the Lord, right? With Jesus and stuff. And I remember the very first time reading the Bible, I just picked it up and it was, the Good News Bible that has the little stick figures in it. Mm-mm. You don't know that? Oh my gosh, they're so cool. It's like, it's kind of it's called the Good News, and it's a paraphrase kind of a Bible, but it's got those iconic stick figures in it. And so I opened it up to the parable of the sower and the parable of the seed, and I read it. And it says, some seeds fell among the thorns and some among the weeds and some on the stones, but some fell on good ground and some yielded, 60, 30, 100 fold. And right off the bat, I was like, I'm that guy.
Yeah, I want to be that guy.
Dude, I'm right off the bat. The very first time I read it, it's like immediately I just identified, yes, that's me right there.
What do you mean? Like that's you, like that's who you wanted to be.
I identified. I wanted to be. I didn't want to be one of these guys.
Okay.
cast off the wayside or choked or whatever, burned up. I wanted to be the fruitful guy, that guy. And so shortly thereafter, again, I'm going to school. I'm riding my skateboard. It's the UNM area. I'm riding my skateboard through Yale Park, and I hear this band going off. And I'm like, oh, a band. Wow, cool. So I pull up my skateboard, and I'm listening to the music, and I look up at the stage, and it's like, hey, there's Johnny, my buddy from high school. And so he gets done playing. He's like, hey, Dale. And I'm like, Johnny, what's going on? He's like, dude, you need to come to church. And I'm like, church?
No way.
They were a Christian band. It was an outreach. And so he invited me, and I went and heard the gospel. And again, right off the bat, I just immediately
You had no resistance.
No resistance. There was a
really?
I was just like,
you had no past.
It made sense to me. Well, I was
other than raised in like Sunday school or whatever.
Dude, I was partying, I was beer drinking, smoke doping, and doing all the.
But you didn't have like I feel like when most people, especially go to church for the first time in a long time, or for the first time really as an adult, a conscious, independent adult, whatever, they'll go and they'll be resistance. They'll be met with like, oh, I don't know, I guilty.
The gospel made perfect sense then, and it still does now. There's
your sin didn't hold you back in any way? Like, because you're saying you're coming out of some of that partying lifestyle, whatever.
The guy said, hey, do you want to get saved? I'm like, yeah. Sure.
This is Del in a nutshell right here.
Pray? Okay, yeah, pray. What do you pray? Jesus, come into my life, seems be my Lord, I repent, all this stuff. It was easy for me, dude. There was no.
So you didn't deal with any like sense of shame or like, I don't know, fear of like losing your lifestyle or anything like that? You're like, yeah, this sounds great. I'll give my life over.
I didn't even think about any of that stuff, dude.
Wow.
No, I didn't. I was just like, wow, Bible, because I was reading the Bible back then. And no, I mean, and so right off the bat, I got involved.
You were primed.
I got involved in music, and so next thing I know, I'm doing the outreach, singing songs about the Lord and writing songs about Jesus and stuff. And and then get a load of this, dude. This is cool. We started a band, and we wrote some songs, and we were actually pretty good, dude. We had some licks, dude. And so we decided we're going to go into the studio and record it. And so we did, and we got a good recording, and we took it down to the radio station, and they played our song on the radio, dude. I remember driving down the road, driving to work one day, and all of a sudden, dude, there's my song on the radio. I'm like, oh my gosh, my song on the radio. And so,
especially back then.
Yeah, that was 80s.
Oh, that's a big deal in the 80s, I imagine.
Yeah. And then I get a phone call from who is now my wife. Right back then, she was my
crush.
Yeah, I wanted her to be my wife. And she's like, "Hey, I heard your song on the radio." I'm like, "You heard my song on the radio?"
Oh, yeah.
And so a year later, we were married. Yay!
Wow.
Yeah, turned out all right.
So you guys, you came to the Lord, and shortly thereafter met and married.
I met Louise at TVI when I was going to TVI.
Oh, so you knew her prior to coming to the Lord.
So we went our kind of separate ways, and that's when I had gotten saved.
And then, so you guys were not together at the time.
No, we were friends, but
how did she come to the Lord separate?
She had her own journey, kind of similar to mine, but yeah. And then when she started coming to the church that I was going to, we both kind of, I don't want to say got saved together, but we were doing our best to walk the walk.
Yeah. Fair enough. You didn't grow up with a dad in the house?
I did not, dude. My real dad split with my mom when I was 4.
Okay.
And so my mom, I was raised by a single mom, and my mom did
wonderful woman.
Yeah, she did a great job. I think she did a great job.
She did a great job.
You think she did a great
Absolutely.
job? I think she did a great job. Yeah. No, I mean,
we love Nana.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was she got married when I was 14, and that's when we moved from Albuquerque to Socorro. So I did have a stepdad, and he was cool to me.
She got married at 14.
No, I was 14.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. So I was 14, and my mom got remarried.
No,
that's good. That's good. And so so I did have a stepdad.
Okay.
Until I moved out, and I moved out when I was 18, back to Albuquerque to go to TVI. But probably the best father figure that I have in my life would have been my father-in-law, my wife's dad. He was a man, dude. You know what I'm saying? It was good for me to have a man in my life.
And when was that when you met him?
When I married Louise.
So you were like 19, 20, or how old were you?
No. I got married when I was 25 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
So real quick, 4 years old, he's out. Never spoke with him again.
I got some interesting stories, dude. I remember one time, that was back in the days when you had the phone book,
Yeah.
right? So I'd open up the phone book and his name was Bob. So Bob Puckett. So I'd call it up. Hey, this is your son. It'd be like, oh, yeah. So it's like, oh yeah. And so we have this conversation. So what's going, and then he'd be like, so wait, what's your name? Dell. He's like, oh, I think you got the wrong number. It's like, oh, sorry, click. So it'd be somebody else, And so, yeah. So
so you didn't actually get a hold of him?
Yeah, it wasn't really him, yeah. And, and I think, looking back, dude, I have to believe there was God's mercy, what I'm saying, to protect me from maybe some of the personality traits or whatever,
things you might have inherited.
Because I've heard that he was, a chain smoker and vile mouth and just maybe not the best example for a young, impressionable young man or whatever. So I'm guessing that the Lord maybe just took him out of my life for that reason, so that maybe I wouldn't have that influence or whatever. So
did you ever grow up with any resentment towards him or anything like that? Never.
No. It was just, for me, it was just normal. I mean, I didn't think. I wasn't too, I didn't. It was, for me, just life was just like, maybe I was just dumbling through it or whatever like that, but I never really thought about it,
That seems strange to me.
I know it does, huh? But
I think a lot of people, would not have it, the normal reaction to that probably wouldn't be, I think it was the Lord's mercy. I think you're right. I think you're very logical. I think you're very smart analyzing the situation. I think you're right. But there's also like the emotional, like familial, the tie, the lack of your dad,
Dude, I had a good childhood, dude. I ain't gonna lie to you, dude. I mean, there's no regrets, dude.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And as far as like the emotional thing, I'm not really an emotional dude. I'm kind of a flat line, and I know that.
I've seen you cry.
Yeah, dude. Some things make me cry, dude, which I don't feel like emotion. I just like all of a sudden I start crying, and it's like, dude, why am I crying? It's kind of weird, huh?
Wow. So that's crazy. Yeah, you said you had stories. Give me one more. Do you have any? In regards to that.
Oh, okay, yeah. I don't know if okay, I'll tell you the story.
It's all right. Yeah.
Okay, when you were asking me about when coming to the Lord, so during that time when I was coming to the Lord, I remember specifically 1984. It was like all of our buddies said, "Hey, let's all go out to California and let's go to the US Festival," which is a huge 3-day festival. It had all the bands that we all loved and followed back then. And one of the nights was the heavy metal night, what I'm saying? I remembered specifically it was Quiet Riot and Motley Crue and Scorpions and Triumph and Judas Priest and, all of these bands, the head and Ozzy, and the headliner was going to be Van Halen. And so, all these were the bands that I was, influenced by as a teenager. And that's, I cut my teeth learning all their songs and stuff. So, that was the time in my life when the Lord was dealing with me, right? He was pulling me out of the world into salvation, right? And I remember just, I wouldn't say struggling, because I wasn't struggling, but there was a fight, but the fight was like I hate you kind of a fight. And it was against the devil and against anything that he was trying to throw at me to get me to trip up or to sin or whatever. And one of his tools was Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne in particular. I remember I had the Mob Rules t-shirt, and in the middle of the Mob Rules t-shirt had basically a picture of the devil. And I remember one time walking in, I was wearing it, and I walked in to where my grandma was sitting. She was just sitting in her chair, and she looked up at me and saw it. She's like, Black Sabbath? That doesn't sound very Christian. And she went back to watching her TV show, but for me, it was just like a dagger. I'm like, yeah. So I took the shirt off and burned it. And so,
literally burned it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was like, I don't want anything to do with it. It's like, anyhow. So Ozzy Osbourne kind of represented like the devil, to me, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so his lyrics were like going off the rails on a crazy train, and then Suicide Solution, all of these, anti-Christian, Christian, lyrics, and his, just his imagery was a lot of voodoo and this and that. And just, that kind of stuff.
Dark stuff, yeah.
Anyhow, so we all get up in the van and we're driving out to California to see the UST festival. So I'm the kind of guy that has to be front of the stage. I'm not happy to be back. If there's two people in front of me, I'm going to fight to get to the front, right? So that's my personality. So there's 378,000 people at this concert and I have to be front row. So at 9:00 in the morning, we drive up, the concert doesn't start till 1:00. So from 9:00 in the morning to 1:00, I'm trying to get up to the front of the stage, and it's hot and it's crowded and there's people throwing up everywhere and there's
sounds like South by Southwest.
Dude, it was absolutely insane. But here's the deal. So flying over the head was the airplane flying, and he's pulling a little sign that says, "Ozzy loves you. Ozzy died on the cross for your sins." Little airplane going over, pulling the flag, and I'm just like, that's it. See right there. And then I was going by. You see these what we would call them now homeless people on the other side of the fence because everybody's going into the concert where there's people on the other side of the fence and they're just going, Ozzy, 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 Ozzy. And it was just like, they're making like the devil sign, dude. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is just so crazy. And it's like,
we call them homeless now. What did you call them in the 80s?
they were just people, dude. just people. But anyhow, so all that to say, so I finally get up to the front of the concert. The first band's going to be Motley Crue. I know that. So I'm just like, I'm not really a big fan of Motley Crue because they say, what's that one where they say something about the devil? I forget. What's the name?
I don't know. I don't think I've ever listened.
They had a famous devil song or whatever, but I was just like, I wasn't there for them. But anyhow, so I'm getting up to the front, and there's so many people. I can't even step on the ground. I'm like stepping on people, to get up, right? And because the ground is just mud, because these people are with hoses just spraying the crowd.
Really? Just to keep them cool?
Just to keep them cool. And so like for me, I would just take off my shirt and I'd hold it up, and the guy would see me.
Sounds like Burning Man.
And he would like squirt my shirt, so I'd just so I could stay hydrated. Right?
From your shirt.
It was gross, dude.
That is gross.
But anyhow, so I finally get up.
After you're all sweaty.
I know. Yeah. So I finally get up to the front of the stage, and I'm just getting smashed, dude, smashed. And I look up over the crowd, and there's like these heavy metalers with the spikes. You know what I'm saying? And they're getting rolled over the crowd. They passed out. They finally get up to where I'm at, and it's just like scrape. You just throw them over onto the stage with some. But hey, dude, I'm there, dude. I'm not giving up.
You're
my
in
spot.
the front row.
Front row. So anyhow, the first band comes out. It's Motley Crue, and they do their devil. Oh, the guy comes out with the camera. He's like, guys, give us a picture for the album cover. So everybody's all like, yeah. It's just satanic, dude. It's just that when I looked at it now, it's just satanic. And so I'm waiting for the prime opportunity. The first band, Motley Crue. The second band was Quiet Riot. The third band was Ozzy. And I'm like, oh, dude, I'm going to go out with a blaze of glory, dude. So,
and you, at the time, you're like, you loved him.
No.
Oh.
Ozzy was the epitome of evil.
Why? What drove you to fight yourself to the front if you didn't like Motley Crue, you didn't like Ozzy?
For this reason, dude. So.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah. So I'm strategically placed at the right spot, dude. I'm right.
Oh my gosh, what's going to happen?
On the front of the stage, dude.
Oh, no.
And so I'm just waiting. And sure enough, Ozzy Osbourne, if you can actually look at the videos on YouTube. You don't see me, unfortunately. I think I got canceled or edited out selectively. They didn't show this, but what I'm telling you is God's honest truth. This literally happened. So I'm waiting, and I'm looking at the bouncers, and I'm looking at the stage, and I'm looking. And so Ozzy he comes out, and he's doing his devil stuff. He comes out in this total voodoo outfit. He looks like the devil, dude. And I'm like thinking, oh my gosh, I can't take this anymore. Number one, I'm hot, I'm dehydrated, I'm tired of fighting with everybody, and I'm definitely not digging on Ozzy. So, okay, so I'm strategically looking at, okay, this is my opportunity. So I look, and boom, I jump up on the stage, and I get up with literally within 8 feet from him, and I just give him the bird. I'm just like,
no way. That's so funny.
And I'm just like, and then
because you're at war with him.
Boom, and then I get tackled, gang tackled. These guys, the bouncers, whatever. Like, boom, they get me, to throw me, give me in the head, like, drag me underneath.
That is so funny.
Underneath the catwalk, and so now I'm underneath the catwalk, and it's just like as far as you can see, shoo, both ways, shoo. just the stage
Yeah.
underneath it, and so you can hear the boom, boom, you know, I'm underneath the stage, right? So I just eject myself out. I walk as far as I could.
The security just pushed you under there and then let you go?
They just kicked me out.
Okay.
And so I went as far as I could. So now
Not towards the back of the stage.
no, toward the side. It was the, if you're going north, south, east, west, I went north to get out from underneath. And then so I walked around all the way around the back. Again, there's 378,000 people there, and it's like on a hillside. So I walk all the way up into the back.
Where is this?
San Bernardino, California.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm way back, you know what I'm saying? So now I'm looking down at the stage, and it's just a tiny little, you could see him, like by the time that you wouldn't hear the song till like boom, you know, it would come back at you. So like, but that was my moment of clarity, rebellion against all things evil and dark, demonic. I was just like, nope, I'm just sealed the deal, dude. Nope, I'm not part of that world. And then
That is so funny that you had a moment of literal resistance to Ozzy Osbourne.
yeah, and then the other band that comes out, Judas Priest, same thing. It's like I remember having this moment where I'm looking at the crowd, and the crowd is shouting, Judas, 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 Judas. That was it. You know, they were crying or chanting for the band. It was probably their encore or whatever. And I'm just like, dude, that Judas was the one who betrayed Christ. Why are these people here 2,000 years later still cheering for the guy who betrayed Christ? And it was just so clear for me. The next band that came on was a band called Triumph. Now, Triumph was one of these bands that was not evil, but they would sing songs like Fight the Good Fight. You know, the good book says it's better to give than to receive. You know, it's like it was the 80s rock, but it was like they had like Bible verses stuck in their thing, and they were all about light and love and positivity and stuff. And
Triumph.
Yeah, even the name. And so again, they weren't like Christians, but they were not evil like these guys. And so I whenever they do the sign, it wasn't like the devil sign. It was like just people holding up their finger up. You know what I'm saying? It was just a binary clarity thing that I was just like, yes, no, yes, no. And so it was just another like filter, another data point that the Lord was using to extract me out of that world system into salvation. You know what I'm saying? So
that is a pretty interesting, pretty vivid.
I would relive that moment again, dude.
Illustration. That's wild. Did you get hurt?
No.
No, they just like tackled you and
just the scratches on my back from the heavy metalers with the spikes. That was the only hurt that I got.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
With so many people there, that's like 300-some thousand. That's crazy.
Yeah. And I live to tell about it. Yay.
Do you think that was formative?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Do you think that was like a monumental Dell forming moment?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you did you play metal after that?
I still play metal.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, I play everything: jazz, metal, blues, rock.
And so you must have been what, 20, in your late 20s?
Well, that was what, 2000? No, that was 1984.
Oh, that's right.
Mm-hmm. So I would have been 20.
This is before you got married and everything.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So that was your origin, maybe something that changed your heart, and then you maybe became more interested in reading, and then you did, and then you saw that guy at the church,
Yep.
Okay.
That was all the time frame. I'm not sure which happened first. I'm sure that the Ozzy story happened before I started going to church. Yeah, I did.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a unique person. I don't know anybody like you.
You're a pretty unique person as well, dude. Chorus is asleep.
I'm over here.
No, he's there. Yeah, Chorus is also very unique.
Yeah.
He's it's just interesting. We go through, you know, what forms us. I think I'm currently fascinated with this. What forms our identity? It's kind of like a theme on the show, I suppose. But it's just something I think about a lot. Like what makes Dell. You know, and a lot of it's your certain circumstances, things you live through, experiences. Sometimes it's people and parents and lack thereof. And everybody responds a little differently. And there's no absolute formula that is, you know, fits everybody's story perfectly, or like, you know, someone given your exact circumstances, I wonder if they would respond the same way. Probably not. People are different. They're just, so there's that aspect. And I don't know, I find it fascinating to consider our identities and how they naturally form, and then also how we can kind of take dominion over them in a sense. And I think that's actually the call, right? Especially as Christians. Paul says, it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. It's this idea of ridding ourselves of our fallen, our sinful identity, our flesh nature, or whatever it is, and adopting the Christian, God's, the adopted identity into his family.
Yeah.
And,
Dude, I want to leave you with one interesting, I want to say one. There's actually so many, it's hard for me to pick, but just one of the most recent ones that I kind of stumbled on. It's, you remember when Jesus was, doing the Passover right before he got crucified?
Mm-hmm.
And it says that they went to the upper room and they had their Passover, and that was the night that Judas betrayed Jesus. And it says that they sang a hymn. Remember, it says they sang one hymn, and then they went down. And most scholars believe that the hymn that Jesus would have been singing would have been one of the Hallel Psalms, specifically Psalm 118. Okay? So none of the New Testament was written yet.
Mm-hmm.
It was, it's all going to happen, right? I mean, the New Testament. So the Bible as we have it, it was not yet written. So here's Jesus on the night, and we know that Jesus is the center of time, and he's the center of everything, right? Jesus is the center. So on that night, that Passover night, the night that they're having the communion and everything like that, they sing the Hallel Psalm, Psalm 118. Well, as fate would have it, Psalm 118 is the direct center of the Bible. If we have it, if you were to Google it right now, say,
out of the 66.
Dear Siri, what's the center of the Bible? It would take you right to Psalm 118. And so it's just little stuff like that. You're just like, wow. So Jesus knew what the whole Bible was going to consist of prior to that, right? Why did he choose to sing Psalm 118? Did he know that was going to be the center of the Bible? So just crazy stuff like that.
I mean, it wouldn't be the center of the Catholic Bible.
Yeah, I mean,
the Apocrypha.
It's the center of, I guess, what we consider, the Bible.
That is interesting. What does it say?
Psalm 118?
Yeah.
Let's find out here.
I would love to hear that song sung with its melody. I wonder if there is a version of it preserved. That'd be crazy.
There is a guy who does, because I guess the what do you call it? The Hebrew alphabet. Each one of those letters is also a musical note.
Really?
And so he's done music. He's converted Psalm 23. What would it sound like if it was music? Right?
Huh.
It's fascinating. You can find it on YouTube. It is fascinating. But anyhow, Psalm 118. And I even have a note here, the middle of the Bible right here. And Psalm 118:8 says, "It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man." That's the center verse of the Bible.
Well, he's just, well, read, what is it pretty long?
Let's see.
Psalm?
No, it's as long as the Psalm is.
But that's an interesting verse real quick.
Yeah. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever. Let Israel now say, his mercy endures forever. Let the house of Aaron say now, his mercy endures forever. Let those who fear the Lord say now, his mercy endures forever. So I've heard songs like that, his mercy endures forever. I called on the Lord in distress, and the Lord answered me and set me in a broad place. The Lord is on my side, I will not fear. What can man do to me? Can you imagine singing that, knowing that you're going to be going to the cross?
That's all I'm thinking about. Before you continue, all I can think about is the Garden of Gethsemane. I mean, when he's like, Lord, let this cup pass from me. Because he's got to be trembling. He's got to be at dinner. He probably didn't eat, right? I can't imagine he ate.
Yeah, and verse 7 says, the Lord is for me among those who help me. Therefore, I shall see my desire on those who hate me. It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man.
I missed that.
Okay, the Lord is for me among those who help me.
The Lord is for me among those who help me.
Therefore, I shall see my desire on those who hate me.
I shall see my desire on those who hate me. What? I don't understand that.
Well, let's say here, in context here, it is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man. It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in princes. In other words, he's going to be betrayed, going to be basically a sacrifice for all of humanity, all the sins of the world, right? I mean, the Passover lamb, that's the picture of it, right? And he's going to be betrayed by man, whom he created, whom he loves.
Whom he just said, and Lord has mercy on.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's interesting that you said that, he probably didn't eat, they obviously had wine, right? And maybe some of the disciples were maybe a little tipsy, right? Because when they went down,
fell asleep.
When they went down to the garden, they couldn't even stay awake, in Jesus' moment of need, his hour, right? He says, the hour is upon me. And it's like, can we watch him pray? And the disciples are like, yeah, sure. Right. And it's like, you can make an argument, it's like, at best, getting drunk, is probably disappointing for the Lord. I'm saying, here's the Lord, in my hour, and I can't even count on you guys. And so and then Peter's like whips out his sword. He's like, I'll defend you, Lord. And cuts the guy's ear off. It's like, Peter, put your sword away, dude.
Yeah.
You've had a little too much to drink, Peter, So yeah, no, it's a very interesting that he would sing the Hallel song. Turns out to be the absolute center of the Bible. And again, that's just another confirmation that what we have is the entirety of what we have, what we call Scripture, was meant to be. That's just another data point. Have you ever heard of the guy? His name is Ivan Panin. I might have told you about him. No?
Mm-mm.
Ivan Panin was a Russian mathematician who lived during the turn of the century from the 1800s to the 1900s. And he was a, not an agnostic, but an atheist kind of a guy. He wasn't religious or saved or anything like that, but he wanted to disprove the Bible. And so he started looking at the original text in the Hebrew and the Greek and stuff like that. Some of the things that he discovered were just phenomenal, amazing stuff. Here's one of them. And again, he's a Russian mathematician. So he looks at the original Hebrew and Greek, and not only does he see the letters, but he also sees them as numbers, right? So he would just look at these not as like an instructional text or a moral code or the word of God, but he would just look at them as numbers, right? So he would take this is what he would do. He went to Matthew and he found all the unique words in Matthew that were only found in the Gospel of Matthew, and he took those out and he looked at the number. Then he went to the next book, Matthew, Mark. So they went to Mark and then took out only the unique words that are found in the book.
When you say unique, what do you mean?
Only used in that gospel.
Oh, okay.
Not found anywhere else, or not used by only the words that were unique that he used. So they would take those words out and then look at the number. Matthew, Mark, Luke. Go to Luke. Take out the number, only all the words that only Luke used, no one else used them. Take those words out. Look at those numbers. So he did that to the books of the New Testament.
All of the books or just the Gospels?
Well, definitely the Gospels, but I think this applies to some of the other books, but definitely the Gospels.
Okay.
And lo and behold, the numbers are all divisible by the same number or whatever. Like it's like one of these things where you're like, you can't argue with it because it's math, but then you have to ask yourself the question, how, number one, how did it happen? Number two, why? And so these kind of questions are discoveries that lead to the questions. Again, for me, what do you do with that information? That is, obviously that's not a hill to die on, but it definitely gives you proof. If you want proof, you can't argue with math. It's like that the fingerprint of God is like embedded supernaturally into his word, and to such minute detail like this, that you can't argue with that. You can argue with, opinions and interpretations or whatever, but you can't argue with the fact that, dude, all of these numbers all line up, dude. And the only way that could happen is if everybody knew what the other guy was going to write. Okay, so are you going to use this word? Oh, okay, I can't use that word. Are you guys going to use this? Okay, I'm going to use this word. It's like, what about you guys? Okay, he's going to use that word. I'm going to use this word. And you guys, unless you had that discussion, that's the only way. The only way that can happen is if the Lord or the Holy Spirit sovereignly ordained and orchestrated all of that stuff supernaturally. So
interesting stuff. Yeah.
Interesting stuff. What do you do with that information? What do you do with it?
You know what I find more what more, not persuasive, but you know what I find more powerful in my recent years is to bring it back to what you kind of were talking about with Mars Hill, the sermon, Paul's greatest sermon. I'm presuming, without being fresh on it, that he was speaking in their mythology about their invisible God, as you were talking about. The Logos. When John talks about, in the beginning was the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God. So he says that there at the very beginning of John. And then later on, Jesus says in his gospel, in John's gospel, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. But I emphasize the truth. I am the truth, capital T, truth. And that seems like a really strange thing, because it's like, here's a man saying he is a metaphysical idea or thing.
Or a concept. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but it's a very fascinating thing, because when you read the scriptures, there are a lot of interesting things that say he was the cornerstone of all creation. He was the invisible, he was the image of the invisible God, the manifestation of the invisible God, something along those lines. I think he literally meant, I am the truth. But to me, that was, when I first read the New Testament, for example, when I first went through Matthew, there was this feeling of peace or completion or inarguable
rightness.
Yes. When you hear him, his words, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be open. In all these different challenges, when you hear the parable of the sower and you're like, I want to be that, to him who has ears to hear, let him hear.
Yeah.
When you hear all these different things and you're in a position of humility in your heart of hearts, it's self-evidently true.
Yeah.
And undeniably so. The skeptical mind still wants practical, rational reasons to believe, as you can mature in your faith or whatever, to test these things. But those are the things that I think a lot of the world may not understand. When believers who approach the Bible or hear the words of Jesus, the gospel, whatever, in a place in their heart of humility and not of pride, they receive the Lord. You don't need this crazy intellect or whatever it is to have the truth, to live according to the truth, to be a Christian, whatever. And I think that's hard. It's hard to translate. I wish you could, but you kind of can't. It's like there's no answer to give to somebody proof necessarily. There are ways you can be an apologist and you can make logical. He is logical. He is therefore not disconnected from mathematics. Like you can get there, practically speaking. But you're never going to get there unless you, and we never got there until we were in a position of a desire of humility, of the end of our way. That's another reason why I think when that sentence, when I am the way, the truth, the life, he will, there's that old Buddhist saying, funny enough, Buddha, I think, was the one who's coined for this. The teacher will present himself when the student is ready.
Mm.
And that's kind of how Jesus is, isn't it?
Mm.
It's like you won't really get there until you're ready.
He also wrote all those lucky numbers on the back of the fortune cookie paper, I think.
Jesus?
No, Buddha.
Oh, yeah. I think he literally handwrote them.
Yeah, I think he came up with all those as well.
Yeah. To quote Buddha and about Jesus. I'm conflating.
Well, in the Athens story,
we're conflating world religion in a sense, because Greek mythology is utilized.
Yeah, he quoted, I think it was Thor or whatever, says, "In him we move and breathe and have our being," and stuff like that. That's a quote from the poets.
Huh.
Yeah.
And Paul actually talks about the Greek the Greek gods or whatever, the Greek mythology. And funny enough, in Genesis, it kind of talks about the heroes of old. Some allude that might have been alluding to like Zeus or those types of people. This is Genesis 6, and he talks about the sons of God. creating these heroes of old, type of thing.
Don't get me started, dude. Don't get me started.
I know, that's a whole other episode.
This thing on?
Now that we're coming to the end, why don't you plug people? Where do you sell these things? How can they get in touch with you? Your YouTube channel. How many subscribers do you have?
I am up to, I think, 36,000 now.
Cool.
36,000. Yeah, it was totally organic. Dude, I didn't do anything other than post videos of constructing them and then teaching people how to play them. And I still do that to the day. I mean, what I do is I'll do a build video that shows basically the construction so that the person who's buying it can see
how it was built, what went into it.
Yeah, what kind of woods. And, of course, if they have special requests or whatever, we try to implement that. But then most importantly, what it sounds like. And I do that as a customer service, excuse me. Because if I was buying something from some stranger off the internet, if I could hear it and see what it looks like, I would have a lot more comfort and stuff. And so that's the crux, I guess, of my YouTube channel. And I've kind of garnered, I guess, a little following,
absolutely,
little cult, little following.
You've been doing it for years.
Yeah, since 2014. My gosh, right?
That's it?
Yeah.
Longer than that. Maybe not this channel. But you were on there 2012.
Yeah, I'm talking about just the cigar box.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to play this little song. See, we'll play Name That Tune.
Okay.
Okay.
The Dell version of Amazing Grace. That's exactly what that was.
Amazing Grace. Thank God, dude, for His amazing grace.
How do people find you?
YouTube
At
PuckettCBG.com Puckett Cigar Box Guitar. YouTube. That's it. That's my. I've decided to just kind of just narrow and focus.
Just there, and they can find these. They can contact you through there. Maybe buy one.
Yeah, if they want to. They're very cheap but very expensive.
And by cheap, he does not mean low in quality. They're great. You who has them? And you have very prominent figures that play these.
Dude, I can name drop, bro.
Name drop.
Dude, I gave one to Tommy Emmanuel. He's got one.
Wow.
David Crowder's got 3 of them. He
Yep.
bought one, then 2. And
I saw him play one over here in Albuquerque a few months ago.
And so whenever I build one for these guys, I put heart and soul. I make sure that it's road worthy because I know that these guys they play hard.
Tommy Emmanuel's a big scalp there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so is David Crowder. I mean, they're both huge.
Yeah, and I got a few others out there that are touring, that are playing with them and stuff like that. But they're poor man's guitars. I'm seriously. I mean, you can make these things for pennies on the dollar. Seriously, I mean, they're so fun. They're addicting. So fun.
He didn't play this one, but look at this. This is one of his favorites.
I don't recommend starting because then you'll never stop.
Making them or playing them?
Playing them.
They're really, really awesome.
Dude, I've been a guitar player all my life. And when I started playing these little toys, dude, it totally just made me like a little kid again, dude. Seriously. I mean, it's so easy to jam.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, thanks for coming on.
Dude, thanks for having me.
That was awesome. We'll have to do it again.
And you can edit out all the goofy stuff, right?
Nope.
Nope.
I could, but
You could.
I won't.
You should.
I think we're going to leave it as raw as possible.
Okay. All
What
right.
was goofy? It was all good. You can, yeah. Anyways,
just hearing my
oh yeah, you're great. You
my
did awesome.
voice,
It was awesome. Thank you so much. Hey, I was gonna do like plugs. You like the video, share it, do all that fun stuff.
Yeah, that's why I say share, subscribe, like, share, comment,
Ring the bell notification.
hit the notification bell,
Yeah.
all that, and I say blah blah blah. I says you guys know what to do.
Yeah.
You know what to do.
Love you. Bye.